with her big dumb face. The longest opening sequence.
Madonna's midlife.
It's when are all chairs bolted to the... We're not told that. Yeah, we do. We're not told that. It is written. It is written.
We need to fix that opening so that you say the full Madonna's midlife crisis, because it's
Madonna's midlife crisis.
The most enjoyable thing ever. Madonna's midlife
I
crisis.
laughed so hard. I've never laughed that hard.
That was what a joy that was captured for posterity, because it broke your brain that night.
Never have laughed that
after 17 Cayman Jacks. Anyway, getting off topic. Gran Turismo. Have you seen this movie?
I did. I went and saw it in theaters.
Yeah, I did too. Do you want to talk about it? It's a good movie.
Yeah, man. It was a pleasant surprise.
All right, cool. I'm not gonna readjust for actually, well, let's just do it. I'm on my tiny screen, so
yeah,
it's not all that fun to click around in here, you know.
He's on location. Chucky Rance is on location.
Yeah,
he's doing a job.
I should just be talking into like a crappy mic, you know.
Yeah, that's what you need.
Yeah. Anyway, you ready to get into it?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. You asked for it. Gran Turismo is a very good movie. McCurdy, what you got for us?
Wow. That was the quickest review I've ever heard in my life.
Wow. I'm out
literally
shooting.
Probably you just walked out of the movie. You're like, all right, I got it.
Yeah, I'm on a
in
job.
Character, by the way.
Oh, nice. Right. Yeah. No. Well, yeah. If only those could be orange. You know, like
but
Star-Lord.
like every scene,
he had the Star-Lord orange ones.
But every scene in the movie, he had his headphones like on his head. Like either they were on him or they were like here.
Yeah,
you know, like the whole movie.
As you would.
Just like David Harbour's like, give me some headphones. I just want to put some headphones. I want to put them on my head.
I want to look legit, bro. I want to look like my whole life is like ruled by headphones, which is they are. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna do a quick review later in the week because I literally just saw this movie. I'm just kind of I'm on a gig and stopped over in Michigan because I had nowhere else to stay. So I'll be recording that later in the week. So in the meantime, I thought it was a really good movie. What you got, buddy?
I got our ranked stuff because I came prepared, but it also has been very hot where I have been. It's
because I came prepared.
Yeah, I did.
No, I get it. Go ahead, rub it in.
Okay. Yeah. Rubber in. If you haven't already, please buy our merchandise. We have it at the store. Huevos has been just shilling the heck out of this every week. We bring this up, so please buy a t-shirt, buy a sticker. We would appreciate it. We'd also would love if you have bought a t-shirt or whatever, please send us those photos. We want to show your faces and show that you're wearing the merch out in public. It'd be pretty cool. Chucky, where'd you go? I can't do the show without you, Chuck. I'm lost. I'm so out of time. I'm so lost without you.
I opened up a Two-Hearted and it's all over the floor now. So just get us going.
Well, okay, Two-Hearted Ale. All right, Gran Turismo, directed by Neil Blomkamp, screenplay by Jason Hall and Zach Balin, story by Jason Hall and Alex Tiss, I don't know. It's TSE, based on Gran Turismo by Polyphony Digital?
Polyphony?
I don't know why I would say Polyphony.
Polyphony
Digital. That's correct. So off. I don't care. Let's talk about it. So here's a quick brief history of Gran Turismo, created by Kazori Yakamuchi, or Kaz, as they like to call him, began developing Gran Turismo all the way back in 1992. First game was released in 1997 on the first Sony PlayStation. Since then, there have been 8 Gran Turismo games. Gran Turismo 7 being the latest, and then there's Gran Turismo Sport, came out in 2017 for PS4. That's why there are 8, even though there's technically the last one is 7. And that one
And you
came
mean
out.
last one is in the latest, or did they?
The latest, yes. The latest one was
Okay.
Gran Turismo 7. And then they had Gran Turismo 6. And then that came out. But then right after Gran Turismo 6, there was Gran Turismo Sport. And so then the next one was Gran Turismo 7. I think that's kind of a weird thing because you would be like, oh, wait, that's what the 7th one is. Like, no, it's not. And it's
Did you ever play the games?
I've never have played this game. I've never owned a PlayStation, so I am completely foreign to this entire franchise.
Okay, I have a lot of friends, buddies, bros who are total gearheads, obsessed with cars,
right?
And would play games like this. And I am very consistent in absolutely hating games like this because everybody at a certain point, everything became about realism. Right. And my thing's always been, who gives a damn about realism in video games? I don't want to come to a turn and have to I have to slam the brakes in order to make the turn. I want Mario Kart. I want nonstop fun. I want items. I want, if the cars have guns and cannons on them, that's fantastic because that adds that unrealistic, gameplay that I want compared to something
I've never been good at these. What you're saying
Halo.
Is you've never been good at these games because I've never been. I've tried to play these racing games that are more realistic.
They're not fun,
and I'm never good at it because I can't.
You have to take it seriously, like this. Yeah, exactly. Like
turns don't work. You
went out of bounds.
I'm never good at this game.
Disqualified. Yeah. To where I'm like, I don't want. Again, I usually draw a parallel to certain games of Call of Duty or Battlefront or wherever. They started to get like, oh, look how realistic it is. You can't run and shoot at the same time. And I'd say this is a video game. If you want that, go play war in real life. But in a video game, it should be fun. This is also why I'm such a big fan of Bollywood movies, because Bollywood movies don't give a damn about realism. Whereas for some reason in America, we're all about everything should be realism. Everything should be taken seriously. They're like, don't you realize you can do anything you want in a film or in a video game? Do that, So I respect that. Gran Turismo, I respect as like, wow, the fact that you could take, this guy really cared about like creating the perfect sim, just like you would with a flight simulator. And that's one of the themes of the movie.
I was just thinking of our fan of the channel, friend of the channel. I don't know what you want to call it, viewer of the channel. He loves the flight simulators and did a whole video on that. Yeah. So I was thinking about because they make a huge point in the movie about like this isn't a game, it's more of a simulator than a game.
Exactly.
And it's a game.
Right off the bat. Yeah.
But
it's to be taken seriously.
I think that's impressive. I think that's impressive that the game is so like in tune. Because I guess the later games between I guess what I read was between 4 after. That's when they really started honing in on like getting real cars and like even like the parts and all this like little micro bits of stuff. And I think we'll talk about it a little bit more as we're doing our review. But like those little things about the game, I think that's really cool that they added. Because I was thinking about like, when you play Mario Kart, it's the only driving racing game that I've ever really loved to play. You can customize your vehicle, but the customization of it is like it's unrealistic. But like in this game, it's very, very specific stuff.
Yeah. So and cool. Even down to playing Mario Kart with friends or my nieces and nephews, when we get to that part where you customize your car, I'm like, come on, just pick, just go. It doesn't matter. Right. Let's just get to the game.
Well, it does. If you know how to play, the newer ones, you know how to do. Oh, sure. I've played with you. You do it too. Don't lie to me.
But it takes me 5 seconds. They'd spend 30 minutes on a car, and I'm like, no, everybody hit A. Everybody, no, hit A. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay.
So I respect it, but I don't like games like this. And
360 no scopes. Okay, that's
I want those. That's what I want. I don't want.
The 360
look how inaccurate it is as you're running. Yeah, I don't want that. I want the fun stuff.
Okay, so Charlie, this is the part that you're gonna love the most. This is you're gonna be your favorite slide: the facts versus the fiction and controversy of this film. So let me say, as many films that are based on true stories, they take a lot of liberties to tell the best story for the screen. Check your rants. You've gone on and on about wanting to be lied to Well, I'm here to uncover the lies this film tells in the service.
Lie to me, baby.
A story. So the nature and time frame, first off, the nature and time frame of the GT Academy, Gran Turismo Academy, is very fudged for this story. In reality, the Academy began in 2008 and was founded by Darren Cox, who was a marketing executive for Nissan. What does he say? Nissan?
I think he
so
says
weird for Americans.
I think he said Nissan.
It sounded like he said
right?
Nissan. Yeah, it sounds like he emphasizes that last letter as not as a short, but a...
Yeah, we say Nissan.
Yeah, whatever.
I think he kept saying Nissan.
Nissan. His character is the basis for Danny Moore, who plays Orlando Bloom. Jan, I just said it was Jan, right? Or is it John? No, it's John.
Yeah.
It's John or Jan? Sorry,
Jan.
I see that J and I'm like, it is Jan?
Yeah, Jann.
Jann. Gotcha. So Jan was not the first winner of the Academy, because the movie really kind of makes you believe that he was, and that's not really what happened. So I don't think this film displays the specific times all the events happened, but he won in 2011. So he won the GT Academy. He was the winner of the GT Academy in 2011 at the age of 19. That was the third incarnation of the Academy. I guess they weren't back to back year wise. They were several years spread out. The first winner of the Academy was Lucas Ordonez, and he was from Spain, and he was the winner of the very first one. The order of events has been drastically changed as well. The race in the third act, the Le Mans, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, took place in 2013, where they did finish in third place. So that part is real. That's the highest Jan has ever actually won in any race, according to what I saw online. Was that was like as far as positioning and everything, that's actually the highest he's ever done. This film has Jan teaming up with former runners-up of the GT Academy, but in actuality, the only other sim, as they call it in the movie, sim racer was Lucas Ordonez, who was the first, as I mentioned earlier, he was the first winner. And that third racer was not a sim racer. He was just another racer that had been racing for many years. So again, movie kind of fudges the facts of actually what happened. So they mix things up. Now, the accident in Germany did take place. That took place. However, it was after the race in 2013. So it wasn't before it was after it. In 2015, and it is the cause of some controversy with this film because someone did lose their life. That accident did happen. Basically, what you see, that picture in the slide, the real version, the movie version or whatever, that actually did happen. A spectator did pass away, did die. But it looks like the writers moved this event before the race in Le Mans to bolster the all is lost moment in the story. This is similar, and I felt like this was kind of similar to how they did something similar in Bohemian Rhapsody, where they kind of moved some of the events around as far as when he found out he had AIDS, when he played for AIDS Live or whatever that concert was at the end of that movie. So they kind of moved things around. AIDS Live. I don't know what it was called. Live Aid. AIDS Live. AIDS. We got that. That was in the movie, right? That was the movie, right? That was that movie. I'm so glad you're so tired that you enjoyed that.
Was amazing. AIDS Live.
Please AIDS continue. Live, right? That was Live Aid, whatever.
Live Aid.
Okay, and then Jan's Live Aid.
Like, there's so much in that joke to unpack, but I'll leave it to everybody. Like, that's too good.
That's great. That's good.
Thanks, Ringo. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Please continue.
You're welcome. Jan's relationship with his father was true, and his father was a football player for multiple clubs in England. So that whole thing where it's like his father didn't want him to do this thing and all that's pretty accurate. So they used that a huge chunk in the movie. And then finally, David Harbour's character in this film is completely fictional. There was never a Jack Slater character to have ever existed. However, Ricard Dilva who was a motorsports designer. He was a Brazilian motorsports designer. He was a real life mentor to Jan, and he could have been the basis for this character. There was also another performance coach, Gavin Gow, who could have also been a part of the basis for this character, and they kind of maybe created this fictional character for the story again. So fortunately, one of the best parts of the movie isn't was not an actual thing that happened. They just manufacture that to tell a better story. So as far as true and false goes, that's the big thing. But yeah, most people are kind of like, I guess there's been some controversy for the fact that they moved that accident earlier than it actually had happened because, but I'm like, who cares? Like, I honestly, I just don't really see the point of why that's such a big deal. Cause it's like, they do mention, but I mean, there is truth in it because it's like, he did even say in interviews that he's like, yeah, I almost quit racing after that because of that event. So it still rings true to what happens in the movie. So I'm like, I don't think it matters that much. Of course, we got screenplay by Jason Hall and Zach Baylin. Jason Hall was an actor and had a recurring role on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but he's also known for writing American Sniper, which was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay in 2014. Zach Baylin should sound familiar because he wrote Creed 3, which we reviewed earlier this year, and King Richard, which we didn't review earlier this year. But someone got slapped for that one, I think. Moving on. I don't have anything else to say. I don't know. This movie, what I will say is that the racing elements, the sports elements of it do feel very in tune with the Creed films. So I was like, could kind of see
but instead of like hardcore pump you up hip hop, it was Kenny G and Enya.
Right. Which I thought was fun. I was like, oh, that's different. That was different. I was very distinct to that person. I thought that was fun.
Because he's not Mr. Confident. He's not Creed. He's the opposite. He's a guy who's like that was one of the better parts of the movie was when the first time in the movie where I was like, whoa, was and I'll be wait, are you done on your slides?
No, I have more.
Okay.
You're just
real quick then. Real quick then. There's a moment where in the very beginning, it's like who won the final race to essentially win the Camp GT and become Nissan's actual like signed racer or like get him on the path to that. Like who will be the person selected. And it was so close. It was clear that Jan had won, but this other guy, whatever his name was, like Monty or something. The race was so close that Orlando Bloom, who's kind of sleazy, he's kind of Mr. Marketer, he's all about the optics, right?
You know what he reminds me of? He's
Moneybags.
He reminds me of like, he reminded me of in Alien, the guy, the guy in the Alien second one. He reminds me of that character who's kind of like,
butthead
oh, this is what's best for corporate kind of guy. And you're like,
exactly. So he basically says like, we could, to David Harbour, he's like, we could just say the other guy won because the other guy is he's like Maverick. He's really cocky. He knows what he's doing and he's really good on camera. And he would be the fountainhead of this whole thing, and so they actually have a little moment. But that does lead though into my one gripe, which I'll get to. I'll leave that alone for now. But basically to rope it back to your Creed thing is that Creed is Mr. Cocky, where the whole thing with Jan is that he's not. And like even when it reaches a point where he starts to have groupies, he's still just like, no, I just kind of want the girl I had a crush on in high school. And
I will say it reminds me more of Rocky because even Rocky was more like I'm just gonna go the distance.
I just hope I can go.
And Adrian, that's just I got my turtles and I love Adrian. Like that's it. He was very down to earth and just very.
Whereas Creed's like, come on, man. Like he's very cocky. He's very in your face.
But that's because he's the descendant of Apollo, and Apollo Creed.
He's got something to prove.
So character-wise, that works. Okay, let's just move on.
This is Rocky. That is a perfect distinction to make. Is that this may feel like Creed, but it's more Rocky, including
more Rocky.
The end of the movie isn't about winning, it's about going the distance. It's about getting on the platform.
Right.
Like they're literally fighting over third place, and it's very exciting, because it's the podium. Because we've been setting up the whole movie that if you podium at Le Mans, you're a god.
Champagne, baby. Yeah. So it's directed by Neil Blomkamp. And what did I rate for this one? I said Blomkamp's from South Africa. He went to school in Vancouver, so they say he's like Canadian South African director. he got his start in visual effects. He worked on the show Stargate SG-1 as a visual effects artist and some couple of other small time shows and stuff. He made his directorial debut, however, in 2009 with District 9, and I'd argue that he is still best known for. He later made Elysium, Chappie, and Demonic. I don't think any of these have nearly gotten close to the praise what District 9 did. I remember, I mean, even Elysium coming out and people were like, oh, that movie was awful. And then I remember Chappie, even worse, was like, because they put, well, I don't remember the South African rap group that was in that movie. I don't remember the name. I've listened to their music, but it turned people off. It was kind of, Chappie, I think, was kind of like a Short Circuit, but like with gangsters or something. I never saw the movie. I never seen Demonic.
It was a group where their name is a city, but I can't remember. But
I can't remember. Like, I've heard their music.
Do go watch their music videos.
Them. Yeah. They're nuts. I love their. Here's the thing. I actually love their music. I love their music videos. But I heard because they're just so weird. They're the weirdest group that I've ever seen in my life.
Isn't the guy? The guy's like his
name's Ninja. That guy's the guy.
They're all like, he's like this. He's all tough guy, and then she comes in. It's like the Joker and Harley Quinn. If the Joker and Harley Quinn became a rap duo, it'd be them. So she comes in like, she's all sweet, but she'll kill your ass, and then he's like, he'll just kill your ass.
I'm just like doing a really bad impression of
both of us are.
Of that. So anyway, but I think as far as just
Die Antwerp.
That's it.
That's what it is. Yeah.
I'm gonna listen to that afterwards. I'm just gonna be driving down the road, just listening to that. Anyway, I will say that's the one. I think the one of the things I liked about this movie, as far as the way it's made, the form, if you will, I think his direction brings a lot of energy to the movie. So he used a lot of dive bomb drone shots, which is kind of a thing that Michael Bay had been starting to use a lot lately. But I feel like in some instances it works. I don't think in every instance. Also, I liked how this film felt like a documentary, which also reminded me of his first film, District 9, where that movie is very much shot like a documentary. So, and I think it worked here because it was like based off true life events or things that somewhat happened. So I thought that was actually kind of cool. And that was one thing I loved.
The only thing that I kind of questioned with that was that every single scene was handheld. So even when they're just chilling in a restaurant, it's like
a little jitter. I wouldn't say it's too bad, but it's not like that.
Bad, but it's still a stylistic choice to make it seem more like a documentary, which is good when it's race day. When it's not race day, it's not always great. But I think at least, correct me if I'm wrong, I think maybe like in my brain when they first have their kind of real heart to heart where David Harbour and Jan are sitting down and he's like, you did good today. It's the first time that he actually gives them any praise. And I think they hit a tripod for that. I think that was the only time where it was steady. So it's like,
sometimes
Neil is thinking here.
Sometimes they'll use a tripod, but what they'll do instead is they'll put a sandbag on top of the tripod, so it's like sort of handheld, sort of steady, like it's a weird mix. So they may have done that. I don't know, but I liked the energy that he kind of brought to the racing aspects of this movie, and 100%. I liked the documentary style. Those are the two things I thought like cool. I wish that there was other directors I think would have done better in some regards, but I liked that thing that he brought to it, and I thought that was kind of cool. Next we've got Archie Madquee.
Totally.
Yeah, that's his name. I don't know. Plays Jan Mardenborough. Madquee was, I keep calling him Madquee. I don't think that's how you even say his name. Was been working since,
but I don't know.
He was born since 2014. His biggest role to date, I believe, was in Ari Aster's Midsummer, which I have not actually seen. I still need to see it. But he has also been in Teen Spirit and Voyager. I don't know what those are. I think they're like direct to streaming movies, and he's been on several television shows. So like he's kind of like he was the one person in this movie I was like, I have never seen this guy in anything in my life, but I felt like I thought he was good. I didn't think he was bad. He just never seen him in anything. So
he performed his role, but David Harbour stole the show.
Right. But also, they do mention this in the film, was that Jan Martinborough does all of the stunts for his character in the racing stuff, which I thought was kind of cool. It's like, let's just bring the guy who actually did it.
Stunt double. Yeah.
And he's like, and so he's essentially his own stunt double. Now I'm like, I question the hairstyle. I'm like, is that the hairstyle he had in real life, or did they just do that for the movie? I don't know, but like, it was just like one little thing where it's like, keep it consistent. I don't know, just keep things consistent.
Isn't that a Zoomer thing to have like a curly?
It's like a
top?
Zoomer hairstyle, but the everything that took place like middle of 2010 or early 2010. So I'm like, I don't know, just an observation. Finally, we got this isn't finally, but we have David Harbour plays Jack Salter. I think is what it was. I don't remember what I wrote. Doesn't really matter. It wasn't a real person. Harbour has been acting professionally since all the way back to 1999. He was in Law and Order. He was in Bond with Quantum of Solace, which we did mention. We talked about that one. You can go watch our Quantum of Solace episode and give that a look-see. His first film role was in the film Kinsey about the sex ed program at IU. He's been in several superhero movies, including Green Lantern, Suicide Squad, Hellboy, Black Widow. But I mean, everybody knows him from Stranger Things. It's like that's the thing that he's been most known for is Stranger Things. I think that was the role that kind of just he'd been in all these other things, and then people didn't take notice of him until Stranger Things. So
I
think that's.
I mean, for us, like for me, it'll always be Quantum of Solace.
Right. But yeah, he's been in
everybody else.
He's been in so many little movies. And I would say like more of a character actor roles type thing. He's not always the lead, but he does play really good characters. So I enjoyed him. I thought he was great in this movie. Next up we have Legolas. Legolas is best known for his role in Lord of the Rings, and that's all you really need to know him. And that's it. Also, his character is based off Darren Cox. Said that earlier. But yeah, Legolas, everybody.
Yep. Yeah. Cheers to that.
Cheers to Legolas.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to Legolas. And then finally, this was just a random one. I was like, wait, what?
That's Ginger Spice. The mom? Is that the mom?
The mom's Ginger Spice. That's a random one. I was like looking stuff up and I'm like, wait, what? Jerry Halliwell, who was Ginger Spice in the Spice Girls, plays Jan's mom. Fun fact.
That is so funny.
That's it. Dude. That's it. That's all. Like that's what I thought was fun. I was like, oh, okay, like just random.
That's really funny.
But yeah, no, I recognized, like I was like, oh, she's kind of a really good looking mom, but I was like, I don't recognize her from. I wasn't like, oh yeah, I've seen her and stuff. I was just like, okay. And then when I found that out, I was like, wait, what? That's Ginger Spice. Okay.
That's really funny. Can I go ahead and get my obligatory sexism out of the way?
Do we need to? I mean, is it necessary?
Because I had one thought as I was watching this movie regarding GT Academy. There were I think 2 women involved. And the moment I saw 2 women, I said bullshit. If you had 1, I would maybe believe it. But 2, I said that's bullshit. And I'm looking through Google images of GT Academy. There isn't a single female in the bunch, which is exactly what you would expect, especially 20 years ago. It's just like I didn't buy it for a moment. So
guys, welcome to AIDS Live, the musical with Chucky Rance.
Yep.
K1
welcome to reality where Chucky Rance lives. Anyway, so
Scott says I just love modifying and building cars more so. So I guess Scott plays the game more. I'm just going back and clicking on these because I hadn't seen any of these. And yeah, Scott said he played. That is Scott, right? Played 2 and 3. Yeah, wasn't all about it.
If you would have stuck with it, dude, you could have been a superstar.
You could have been. Okay, my comment about that though, Charlie, was my favorite part when they're first getting into the cars and they get their helmets on and they're like feeling the G-forces. The one girl that like lasts the longest, your like face just like this, like the biggest smile on her face.
She looked freaky.
She's like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah,
that was great.
I knew it.
That was great.
Oh.
So anyway,
all these two-hearteds are exploding whenever I open them.
Well,
I'm an embarrassment.
There's a trick for that. Apparently, if you turn if you turn soda cans, like spin them, that actually helps them from not exploding. As far as
the dumbest thing I ever heard, like back in the day, like old wives' tale,
helps dissipate them.
People would go, they would say, go like this, tap the top.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
No. It's stupid. I remember the first time I ever heard it. I go, why would that work? Wouldn't that shake it up more, and wouldn't that make it even more, sudsy? They go, no, it pops the bubbles inside.
That's not how that works,
like,
but okay.
It's like, no, you're stupid. you're stupid.
Okay, so really I'm going to start off my personal notes
here. If you need it, because again, I'm using my go bag right now. Here's a little overlay.
Okay. I looked it up. I was like, okay, I'm going to figure this out ahead of time. So let me tell you my range real quick.
Okay.
Because you'll probably be like, yeah, I can see that. That's pretty obvious, I think. So my very top is above Mission Impossible.
Okay.
But I'm not certain. I'm like, I don't know if it belongs there. There are things about this movie that's like, does it belong above Mission Impossible? But it is a really well told story. My lowest, I think, is I think my bottom was actually above Flash, but I could see it going lower than that. So I could see it like the lowest of the low, I think, would be above Barbie. But I really think above Flash is actually pretty accurate for me, because I think this movie does feel like yeah, they're gonna say it's a video game movie, but it's more.
But it's not.
It's not. It's more of a based off a real true life
story. It's a really cool story.
Two fictional stories that this movie reminded me of. Can you guess them?
Two fictional
specifically.
Stories.
You probably heard of one of them, or one of them's a book but was turned into a movie. The other one
is it about kids who play too many video games and they shoot up their school?
No.
I thought we were talking about things that you do in a video game and then you do it in real life.
No, but tell me if this sounds. Did you read Ender's Game, right?
Oh yeah.
So there's elements of this movie that reminded me of Ender's Game, where it was basically about a kid who's like super smart. It's like in the future they have to figure the secret government or whatever. They're trying to figure out who's gonna lead the armies, but they all go to this space school, and that aspect of it reminded me a lot of GT Academy. The other one that reminded me of this movie was The Last Starfighter, which is a movie from the 80s where this kid who lives in a trailer park plays a video game, and then he gets recruited to join this basically starfighters to stop some evil empire, very a la Star Wars type thing. But that they were like, I was like, elements of it was like, kind of reminds me of that, because even just the pure, like, this was the story. This guy who played video games, really good at it, becomes a real life race car driver. Like, it felt like that. So I thought that was kind of cool. But
and it was, it was like, it was a tale of like, it was that adversity thing of right away. David Harbour, one of the best scenes in the movie is when David Harbour's like, listen up, idiots. I'm here. Like, all these people are here because they believe in you. I don't. That was like the best speech ever, where he's like, I'm here to make you fail because I think you are a bunch of jokers. So if you can get past me, you can do anything. And all the way down to that whole thing about the brakes were greased. They were greased, whatever it was.
Glazed.
No, not greased. Glazed. They were glazed. Yeah. So it was just like, I'd never heard it. I didn't question it because I was like, I don't know cars well enough to question it. But the whole idea being that just because you do something in a game doesn't mean you can do it in real life. But of course, it's like, yeah, but don't you think ideally, like if you are a race car driver, you should be playing Gran Turismo on a really expensive set all the time, so that you're like, the whole idea was that how he memorized all of these racetracks,
right?
And then on top of that, if he could then be trained, by David Harbour to do it in real life, because the obvious difference is the G-forces and all that. It's no different than spending thousands of hours on a flight simulator and then being able to do it in real life. Now you won't do it on your first try, but you'll have the knowledge and the reflexes and all that. So, he's like, kid, you have natural instincts. It's like, well, yeah, he probably has some natural instincts, but he's also got thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of actually going through the motions. It's not a huge leap. If the movie would be stupid if it went straight from kid plays video games and then and then a driver has a heart attack. He goes to the Indy 500, and a driver has a heart attack, and he goes, I can do it. I can do it. And the kid gets in behind the wheel. He's like 12 years old, and
this sounds like the Disney Channel original movie version, or like the 90s sports movie where like Rookie. What was that? The movie Rookie, where like he catches the fly ball and then throws it back, and they're like, let's make him our pitcher because he could throw that ball back. Things like that. Yeah.
So that's what I mean. Like, that would be stupid, but it's not so crazy to think that you've studied. I mean, that's what you do for anything. You study it, and then you go do it for real. And that's what he did. He studied it for thousands of hours in his bedroom, and then he went to a training camp where he was trained to take that experience and put it into practice. And then he did it against other people who had done the same thing, but they didn't have all that same amount of practice and memorization, all the way up to the whole, where that all leads to is that moment where he's like, I actually know this track better. I'm not going to do what everybody else does. I'm going to do my own thing, which is the theme of the whole story, is that doing it your way. And so anyway, David Harbour lays that out in the beginning, where he's like, even your own mechanics are going to hate you. And I loved that stuff. I was like, this is going to be awesome for that.
I have some gripes with that element, though.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I felt like
they might tie into mine. I have a singular gripe, and yours might tie into mine.
Okay. Let me just say, okay, so sounded like yours was talking about the other racer. Mine had to do with the element that you are specifically talking about, because let me just go through one quick thing that I did like about it to kind of get into why this element feels kind of weird. Because I sometimes when I watch a movie now, being somebody who like will write movies and do things like that, I kind of see the Matrix code a little bit. And when you start seeing the Matrix code, things start feeling like a little weak, or you're like, oh, that looks like they added that later or whatever. One thing I like about this movie is it's very distinct act breaks, much like Beau Is Afraid. It's like there were very specific chapters of this movie. So Act 1 of this movie is getting into the GT Academy and setting up like who this guy is, why he wants to get out of the sludge, why he wants to be a racer.
His hot mom.
Everybody, Ginger Spice. Ginger Spice is okay with him being a race car driver. His dad, not so much. Star-Lord, who? Who? That guy was in Shazam. I've actually met. I didn't meet him, but I've worked on a movie that
there are two African actors, and he's the one. And good luck pronouncing his name, even for me. And the other one is, as I've said a million times, my all-time favorite TV show is Oz. And he plays Adebisi in Oz. The two of them they always play the African. They're two incredible actors. And if there's a role for an African,
you're saying one of those from Africa,
guys. An African
from Africa,
yes. Like a straight up African
it's
always played by one of those two guys.
Got it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. In this country, people are like, "Do you mean African American?" No, I would fucking say that. I'm saying an African, and so even in Shazam, he plays
he plays the wizard.
The wizard.
The wizard.
Yeah.
He plays Shazam, the wizard. Anyway,
in Blood Diamond, he's African guy.
He's the guy.
So on and
Act
so forth.
Act 1, we get him getting into the GT Academy. Act 2A, because Act 2 is the longest act. It's broken into two parts. Act 2A is the GT Academy. How the challenge of that, which I felt like part of me is like, that could have been the movie, but they didn't make that the movie. They kept going, which I think Air didn't do, which is the thing that you complained about in that movie.
Yes.
Act 2B is about the qualifying and getting signed, because basically you're a race car driver now, but you have to finish above fourth so that we can sign you, and I don't even know if that's accurate. Like, I think I read somewhere like that's not exactly true as far as how they have in the movie, but regardless, he has to
and I wouldn't know.
Place. He has to get fourth place, and once he gets fourth place, he can qualify. He can be an actual race car driver. And then finally, Act 3 is the 24 hours at Le Mans, which is a 24-hour race. And it's not like he races for 24 hours. He races a maximum of 14 hours, but it's within teams. So there's either you can have 3 or 4 people on your team. So that's how it's broken down.
I did not know Le Mans.
I looked all this
like
up.
that. I was like, that's amazing. That is so cool.
So anyway, back to my gripes with the movie, because I had to kind of explain that. So the one thing that I felt was a little like felt tacked on, it felt like last minute. Felt the setups feel a little added in. Like how to switch out different parts of the car, customizations paying off happens rather early in the films, because again, he learned you there's a scene where he's the first time you see him, he's like, oh man, this car is so sick. And you can see that he's been customizing his specific car in the game as far as the fins and all this other stuff. And he's like, man, this car is crazy. It's all sick. So you get a sense that he knows the customization within the game. So they set that up. Then it pays off when he talks about his brakes being glazed, and then turns out his brakes were glazed. And he's like, no, I played this game so much. I know a lot about the cars. But then after that, we never see anything else outside of that. So I kind of wish that there was like a third thing. They also have this one scene about race lines, which is the one you're talking about for the end of the movie, where he's talking about the race lines just to show how he wins the final lap. There's never a mention of it in the middle of the film. It just kind of was like one little caraway scene where dad comes in and he's like, what are you doing?
You see it several times.
It's
you see that line.
It felt like at one time.
It wasn't just at the end. I
felt
saw
like
him do that.
You
a couple
see the lines,
times.
but you never see. There's never like what I wanted was maybe a scene where like him and David Harbour having an argument about the idea of going past people's in lines, and I felt like we never got that. And it was like that one setup doesn't happen until the very end.
Right, but it's like that kind of works. Where he's like, "Do you trust me? Do you trust me?" And he's like, "I trust you." But Orlando Bloom's like, "I don't trust you. There's too much riding on this," you know. And so all of that was kind of in character, where the whole thing was we need to catch up. Instead of doing the safe thing, we need to catch up. And to catch up, he did the thing that only he could do, which was to tap into his video game knowledge in order to pass people in a more creative way.
I'm thinking more in terms of like we talk about the Bond films, and usually they set up the gadget, right? The thing that's gonna way he's gonna win the day or whatever.
But
and usually there's a little bit more of a setup
at the very beginning.
There's just no. I felt like a lot of the setups and payoffs are very like. There's not a rule of three with them. It's just really like 1, 2, and that to me, especially when it's like a single scene, just to put that in there feels tacked on. It feels like they finished the film and then they were like, wait, how do we explain? Like, we need something here. It felt like we need something here to explain how does he get from 9th place to 3rd or to 5th place in a very short period of time, and to really get the audience pumped up and everything. And then it's like, well, we'll put the scene early in the movie where his dad catches him playing the game and he's doing these race like yes, I'm just literally saying that was a gripe for me.
You winning, son. Like, you know the meme. You winning, son, like they did a live action you winning, son meme, and I thought the way it was set up was fine, and the way it was paid off was fine. Where I'll agree with you is that they just replayed the scene as a reminder, and that's where it was like instead of replaying the scene, they could have just given another fresh one. So like to backtrack, the first time you see it is he's playing, and we've already seen that him and his dad butt heads, because anybody with a dad knows that there's a time in your existence together where you're going to disagree on like what you should do. I mean, obviously, I imagine just like myself, you probably had talks with your dad at some point where he's like, "What, you're going to make movies? You're not going to make any fucking money doing that. What are you doing? You know,
right?
What do you want to talk about movies on the internet? Are you stupid? You know?" And so that's a tale as old as time. And with this, it's like you can't. His dad even says at one point, he's like, "I still don't understand this PlayStation thing, but like here you are in real life racing a car, so like that's cool, you know." And all the dad stuff was really well handled. But getting back on point, there's the initial scene where he's playing and his dad's just like, "Why aren't you following the race line?" Because he seems to have some experience with the game where the game lays out the general path you should take through a race, right? Because you're not just going in a straight line, you're taking turns.
Even if there's a wind or a turn, there's specifically like a line that you should probably be on so you can stay, so you're not getting like you don't veer off.
You take this turn to that line. You take this turn wide because maybe the next one you need to take it short or whatever. So this path, this video game is showing you the most optimal path. Well, his theory was like, if everybody's following that line, I can anticipate what they're going to do so that I can take advantage of that, which is a good play. later, though, they, instead of resetting that, so that plants that seed, right? And then later, where it begins to sprout, before it becomes a full plant, where it begins to sprout, they just replay that scene with his dad instead of there being a moment where David Harbour's like, "Why did you do that?" And he's like, "Trust me, it, like, you know, didn't it work out?" And he's like, "Yeah, but that won't always work out because the guy will react to you or whatever." Like that should have been the scene where, like, his idea
That's but that's where I'm getting at.
David Harbour.
That's where I'm getting at.
That's where I agree with you on that.
Where it's like, I needed just like a third. That's why I'm saying, like, generally in a script, you want to, if you're doing some kind of weird setup thing like that, you want to have it 3 times in the script. So then it's like you present it, you remind the audience, and then you pay it off, right? So you do those 3 things. This movie just felt like it didn't do a reminder, and so it just felt like it kind of comes out of it's not that it doesn't come out of nowhere. It's just like, oh yeah, remember that one little scene that felt like, okay, why is the scene here? And then it's like, okay, we're paying it off here. But it feels like, but I will say, going back to the father, I feel like they were trying to do the father-son stuff a little bit. I will say, strongest part of this movie is the theme of fatherhood and relationships and mentorship. Even though it's also between him and his dad, it's also between him and David Harbour's character. Because you do see that, like, as the movie goes on, at first David Harbour is an antagonist to him because he's like, I don't want you to win. I'm basically going to beat you guys down. I'm going to cut everybody. And he gets very close to being cut very early in the movie. And then he turns out to be the best one they have. And then they kind of start creating this kinship that you can see the parallels between father and son. And he's like trying to teach him the things that he missed out on, or he didn't do when he was a racer and stuff. So I like that.
Him and his dad, David Harbour and the dad both have the same message, which is don't end up like me. So the dad,
you're right. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the dad had this whole thing of early on, you know, Jan steals the family car and he kind of busts it a little bit. That's a good part. Like that establishing that he can drive in real life was a really good move. In fact, I'll lay that part out. So we've seen him drive in the game, but then he drives his brother to a party, and he doesn't drink because he's the DD, but they get pulled over on the way home, and he's just like, I'm gonna just blow these cops away because I can do it. And so that was kind of the movie planting the seed that he can actually drive in real life, even though he has a lot more time in a video game. So then, but because he busted up the car, he has to pay his dad back. So his dad gets him working on the rail yard where he works. And the whole message there is, if you don't have a plan, if you think you're just going to make a living talking about movies on the internet, then prepare to work in a rail yard, you stupid asshole. That's his dad's message, which is don't end up like me. Like, have a plan, because his younger brother is going to go be a big famous soccer star or whatever, right? Like, he has a plan. What's your plan? Well, I'm going to be a famous racer. Okay, how are you going to be a famous racer just because you play video games? So it's like, it's a really good dynamic, and it's very much like our era, right? Like, you know, when you and I were playing video games, nobody thought they could take it pro. Nowadays, you could play any video game, become a professional.
It's not even video game. It's not even video games now. It's,
whatever it may be.
I talk to parents. Sometimes I'll talk to these parents who have kids that are teenagers, and they're like, every kid now is like going to be like what we do, but like trying to say this is like right now, this is just a hobby for us. But there's kids that are like, oh, I'm going to be a YouTuber, like that. Like that's their career path. Is like, I'm going to be a YouTuber. And you're like, okay, but you gotta,
kid.
Yeah, you can do that, but I mean, like, you know, it's not going to make you a lot of money at first, and so you really have to have some kind of other plan. You can't
unless you're the best of the best of the best, and that's this story is like, you're not going to make it unless you're literally the best, and he proves that he's the best in the UK, and then he proves that he's the best in the world in a video game, and then beats out the other top people or whatever. You know, like, he's slowly making his way up. And even then, he only places third in the end. But the point, to get back to what I was saying, both father figures have the same message, which is don't end up like me. So David Harbour's whole thing is when he finally gets around to why he quit, you know, when his Tom Hanks moment, like in Saving Private Ryan, where we finally figure out his backstory, right? And his backstory is that he was in a wreck, he was involved in a wreck, and it just like gave him the jitters, where he's just like, I'm done, I quit, because it's so traumatic, right? I think it was SB in the Discord was saying how it's very much like Days of Thunder, same kind of thing where like these guys get in a wreck and then it just messes. They have this PTSD basically. So that theming was really cool. Like he has these two father figures and they have their ups and downs, but the message is the same. Like you don't end up like me, but also like continue pursuing this thing. And David Harbour just even down to the use of music and the use of the Walkman, like all that stuff was just. I mean, I had a big smile on my face throughout most of this movie. I was just fully engaged with it. But there's a big but there, which kind of ties into what you've been saying. Would you like to hear my singular gripe of this movie?
By all means, because I am like again, I'm just going to preference by saying I had trouble. I came out of the theater thinking, wow, that was a really good movie. But is it a list topper? Because like my first reaction was Tetris. Air, Creed 3 in that realm because it is very much a similar type of movie. But I was also like, is it though? Because in reality, this movie is a commercial for PlayStation. It's a commercial for
but a really good one.
It's a good commercial for Nissan, and it's a good commercial for Gran Turismo. So it's like overall, it's like I'm like, are we saying that this piece of like yes, I mean movies are commercial, but like a commercial for some product,
I
right?
mean,
SB wants to put it below Super Mario. Get out of here.
Yeah, no way.
This movie was way better than Super Mario. This was the better of the two video game movies, and I wouldn't really call this a video game movie. It's like,
but remember, there's because where we are in history, there has been a trend towards the movie about like some commercial success, right? So like this on here we have Tetris, Tetris and Air right next to each other, both doing that same thing. I talked about The Founder, these movies about some like big or like The Big Short,
one about
stuff like that.
There's one about Flaming Hot Cheetos that we haven't even reviewed. Flaming Hot,
and Blackberry. We should do Blackberry. But we're my one gripe.
Dumb money.
My one gripe is that first off, I didn't even realize that it was Neil Blomkamp until the end of the movie, and I was like, "Oh, okay." Which my take on that. I don't think that's a good or bad thing. I don't want to turn on a movie like this and it be that auteur type of situation. But the way this felt to me throughout, regardless of me really enjoying the themes, David Harbour, Jan, the dad, Ginger.
So we're talking about form. Your gripe is the form, not the thing.
No. My gripe is that while I enjoyed this, I think the story is, and I think it's an incredible story. Like we said, it's very much like Rocky. The gripe is a macro thing. It's not a micro thing. Like sometimes I'll come in and I got like a million nitpicks. This is a macro thing. Overall, it felt, and this kind of ties into what you were saying about setup and payoff. Overall, it feels in the way it's edited together in a macro sense. It feels like a mini series. It feels like a 6-part mini series that was fan edited by Film Hacker, by somebody like me, into 2 hours. What is the running time on this? I meant to look that up. I'm going to look that up right now.
It's like 2 hours, I think. I think it is. I think I was clocking. It was either 2 hours,
2 hours
or
15.
Okay.
2 hours 15. So it felt to me like a 6-part episode miniseries that was edited into 2.25 hours.
I can see that. Here's the thing. I can see that because I did have this thought because I did feel like sometimes I felt like things were rushed. Like we really rushed through aspect. And again, like I said, this movie is very distinct as its act breaks. Some movies, it's a little more natural. It's a little more, you flow into it and you don't even realize you've gone to the next act.
I agree with you that
but this movie kind of like, I also was thinking about Sound of Freedom because Sound of Freedom also kind of had a similar issue, in my opinion, was that you broke that movie down where the first time we meet some of the characters and then we were very stuck on this one child and it really like gets to your heart.
Teddy Bear.
Well, in the beginning. Teddy Bear, right? And then it's like it shifts that story to the setup of them catching the criminals on the island, and then it's the island. But then we have to have a third act, which I felt like was tacked on, and it was.
And it was. Remember that was the part that was untrue.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it felt like, but I felt like the story should have been with that movie. That should have just been the island story. You just over dramatized that story and you would still would have had a really decent movie. And I think with this movie, it kind of is the same regard, whereas like the writers were like, okay, but we got to have like a very triumphant moment. So we used 24 Hours at Le Grand as that triumphant moment for this character. And then we got to have something that happens that was a downfall for him. So we have that accident that happened later. So we'll move that. And then we got to have, what's cool about the story, the nuts and bolts, as they say in the Save the Cat, the fun and games, I think is what it's called.
The fun and games was excellent.
The fun and games is the Academy, because it's like, okay, well, that's what makes this movie interesting is that
the brakes
there
were
was
glazed.
An Academy
you were right. They were glazed. He's like, yeah, you know, like that.
So you could have
the Kenny G moment at night where he's laying in bed and all the other racers are like, are you hearing this? Motherfucker's listening to Kenny G. And he's like, guys, we have a really big race tomorrow.
Right. You could have had a movie. You could have had a franchise off this single movie. You keep the first two acts. That could have been, Act 1 and the first part of Act 2. That could have been a whole movie right there. Like you could have just said, okay, this whole movie is just about who's going to win on top, and then don't emphasize Jan. And
it's 3 for 3. They just keep exploding.
Somebody in your house, somebody hates you. Someone is just shaking.
Somebody hates these cans.
You just hate cans.
Do you know that movie reference? Please tell me you know that movie reference.
I don't know that movie.
Did you ever see the movie The Jerk? Steve Martin.
I know the movie. I've never actually watched it.
Pause to explain that joke, because if anybody hasn't seen The Jerk, you have to. I need to. Okay. This guy, he works at a gas station, and this guy just randomly picks him out of a phone book. I think it's out of a phone book, and he's like, "I'm gonna go kill this guy. I'm just gonna go shoot him." So he's at the gas station. This guy's trying to shoot him, and he misses, and he hits a bunch of motor oil cans, and he goes, "That guy hates these cans."
I think I have seen that. I don't remember. I vaguely remember that now that you're referring to it. SB, real quick. Hold on. Did I click the right one? No, this is it. SB is saying, you guys are making this film sound like it's a contender for Best Picture at next year's Oscars.
Bullshit.
I don't think that at all. No, of course not. I don't think that at all. Of course, Chucky over here doesn't. Dude. I'm just talking about as far as a single movie, because I'm looking at the movies. I don't think Mission Impossible is going to get Best Picture or be nominated. I don't think Tetris is either.
Dude, but I don't. Doing that thing that everybody does whenever we
you're making it sound, but there's a difference between every year.
You better be top 3,
good.
Dude.
Every year there's good movies that just come out, and I talked about. So I was on a Friends podcast recently. It's called the Classic American Movies. You can check that one out. I'll be on it, I don't know, in a month or so. But on his show, he talks about a lot. He pulls a lot of these older movies from like mid 2000, all sorts of films. And they're usually movies you probably never heard of or forgot even came out. And it's just like, yeah, they're good movies. They didn't make a huge ton of money at the box office. They made a decent amount of money, but they weren't critical darlings. Like people didn't write soliloquies about them and say how great they were.
Look at
so they're these movies that are kind of in the middle that just kind of come out and people kind of forget about them over time. And you're like, oh yeah, that movie came out that one year. That's what this is. I feel like this is like a very well told story that I think by next year we'll probably forget about. But I thought it was a good movie. I came out and like, that was pretty solid movie for being a commercial.
Like I generally I can't remember what my scale is, but it's like masterful, great, very good, good, fuck you, right? This is better than good. This is very good. It's not great. Greatness is very difficult to achieve. Greatness is reserved for like the top 3. And the masterful one is number 1. That's masterful. 2 and 3 are great. Everything below it is either good to dog shit, right? So we may say this movie is good or very good, but that's what I mean. That's the you just hate Goldfinger. No. You can say it's got this stuff's good and this stuff's bad, but overall it's pretty damn good. But this movie isn't great. This movie doesn't achieve greatness. but it's a very effective film that put a smile on my face. Like
It's
even at
if
the
you
end,
wanna
all the way at the end, we all knew it was coming. But that moment
Right.
where he's like, they raise his champagne glass to each other, or rather, like Jan's drinking out the bottle.
It's
but
the
David
Dark Knight
Harbour's-
Rises moment. It's the Dark Knight Rises moment where
Yes.
Alfred and Bruce Wayne are like, I don't have to say anything. We know exactly what we're
knowing
thinking.
glance. There's nothing
Yeah.
better on the planet than
Just
the
like-
knowing glance.
Just like, you know. No, but yeah, SP's like saying this, like, this current, like, what he says, this film is currently underperforming. Why do you think that this is? It's slated not to meet its mark profit-wise. You say this film is great, then why is it not captivating
about
audience?
box office. Box office is bullshit. Dude, fucking, like, there was remember when somebody was like, oh, well, then why is Scream 6 the #1 movie in the world? And I'm like, because people are stupid. That's why, because people are easily...
No, but I would say to that
Twilight,
effect,
Twilight,
there's
at some point, Twilight 4 was the #1 movie in the world at some point. That doesn't mean it's good. Money doesn't always mean it's good. It just means they had an effective marketing
I will always say
campaign.
that, like, yeah, because there's a difference between. That's why I'm saying, like,
Sound of Freedom.
movies
Sound
that
of
are
Freedom.
critically well.
Sound of Freedom was like word of mouth, like purely by word of mouth. That surpassed Indiana Jones. No, not at all. It barely had any money, but purely through word of mouth, and then paying off on that word of mouth. It beat out like Indiana Jones. I think it even beat out Mission Impossible, a movie made for like $10 million with hardly any money behind it in the marketing. By being good, I'll say by not being dog shit, managed to beat the box office game, right?
Right.
That happens. It doesn't happen often. Versus, again, like I said, Twilight that can pump
One says, I can't
like $200 million
in
into marketing. What?
It says, I can't get a refund if I hate the movie.
Yeah. And that too. That's why opening weekend is such an important event, because it's like that's where you get all the suckers, right?
Right. I'm just saying, yeah, like, again, like, I'm saying that there are movies that do really well at the box office, aren't critically well claimed. What?
I said that's where you get all the suckers, and Siri chimed in because she's
okay.
No, we're good. We're good. It's just cool. Siri just like she started talking to me like she's important or something.
Right. Yeah. Anyway,
so but let me get back. Let me get back to what I was saying.
It doesn't matter. There are movies that come out every year that are like just fly under the radar. They don't. They don't
remember the best
zeitgeist.
ones.
They are not they don't hit the zeitgeist, because people will remember the worst of the worst. People will remember the best of the best. Either they made a lot of money, or they were critically acclaimed, and a lot of people talked about them because they were hit through all of those award seasons. This isn't going to be an award season movie, and apparently it's not going to be the box office movie. But Charlie and I are sitting here just saying that was a decent, good movie. You're going to have a great time going to the movie theater when you see this movie. It's a commercial for a video game and for cars, but it was a good movie. I was like, yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fun.
I would put it like on that note. I would love to put it with our other commercial products.
Sure.
I'd say it contends with Tetris. I could even say it contends with John Wick, but John Wick again is so masterful.
I think
it's
John
so
Wick's
well executed. It's so well executed.
A little more. Here's the thing: the directing in this movie. I think that Neil Blomkamp, he made one really good movie because of one style that he has just transitioned to every single movie. And I don't always feel like every movie he's done since then has been the kind of movie that he should be doing. I feel like this one is the closest one he's done recently that was kind of in the same realm because of two things. One, it's racing. So you can do a lot of fun things with racing. So he does all these dive bomb drone shots and all this really fast cut editing, which goes with racing. The second reason is because it's based off a true story. So you can really hone in this documentary style that he seems to really like, this kind of avant-garde French, whatever you want to call it. He really hones into that. That little shaky cam documentary style handheld look. And I think that it worked really well for this movie because it was based off a true story. So I felt like, those being said, I was like that. All of that being said, I think like it worked, but I feel like you probably could have gotten a much more basic director. You could have got a Martin Campbell, and he would have done something just equally as good, but it wouldn't have been as flashy. This movie's a little more flashy than that.
But that ties
yeah,
into what I was saying, though. Let me finish my thought on the overall presentation, because again, to me, what it felt like was a 6-part limited series that somebody fan edited into 2.25 hours. So that started with how right out the gate we follow Orlando Bloom to a meeting where he pitches the idea for Gran Turismo, the competition, right? Like, we're going to have a competition where the best sim players become racers. That would have been an entire episode in and of itself. That would have been us getting to know Orlando Bloom. Why does he care? Who is this guy? What's his relationship to Nissan and why he cares? Because like right out the gate, hang on. Right out the gate, he's just like within 30 seconds, he's like, we're going to hold a competition. And all these Japanese guys who are like the board of Nissan, I'm going to say Nissan from here on out because joke's done. Nissan, they're like, why should we do that? And he's like, well, because 80 million people play it, we should do it. But we didn't have, that's where other movies like Air or The Founder or even Tetris, they set up that guy, the visionary, the guy who's like, this is what we're going to do. And where Air sucked was that it was like, he just was like, I want to do it. Whereas with Tetris, it was like my entire livelihood, my family, my daughter's weird play, like his whole life was on the line. That's what you need to set up. This movie didn't have time for that, but it also at least should have shown the birth of the idea for the Gran Turismo camp. The movie begins with the game being invented, and that's cool. Like that I'm glad they put that at the outset because it provided context for like, this all starts because this one Japanese guy is like, we're going to make the best sim ever. But then it goes to Orlando Bloom and he's like, let's do the let's just do this. And it's like, okay, but like, I want to know more about where the idea came from and who you are and all that stuff. But anyway, fast forward, then he goes to find David Harbour because he needs an engineer. The Japanese say, you have a green light for this, but you need to go find an engineer who could make sure that it's going to be really safe, because if anybody dies, we're all going to be responsible. So like, you got to go find the best guy. Everybody turns him down. Like 12 people turn him down. And the last on his list is David Harbour. He goes to see David Harbour, who says, basically, go F yourself because it's never going to work, because this is real life and not a video game. You can't just hit reset, all the cliches. And but what's set up there is that the guys that he's working for at the time are basically like trust fund babies who are just bored and they want to race fast cars. Like they're just like entitled brats. And so Orlando Bloom's like, you don't have to work for them anymore. You could actually find somebody who's real. You could find somebody who's authentic, that came from nothing. They're not just wealthy. But the problem is that while that's that is stating the theme, and that is a great method for getting David Harbour on our side. Once we cut away from that, we go to Jan for a while. We cut back to David Harbour, and he's at a steakhouse, right? Because coincidentally, his brother, Jan's brother, was like, someday every night I'm gonna be in a steakhouse, you know. Then we cut to an actual steakhouse, and David Harbour's there with his whole racing team, and the scene should have been like 10 minutes of them just like giving him shit and him realizing maybe Orlando Bloom was right. But instead, we're there, and he says something like, yeah, trust fund baby, you know, when you go into the fourth turn, you should go harder. And the guy like just immediately freaks out. And then David Harbour 30 seconds later is out the door and he's like, I'm in. You know, it was like, no, this would have been the whole first episode of this 6-part series would have been getting to know Orlando Bloom and getting to know David Harbour and then understanding their motivations. But it was so rushed because this is a fan edit. It was so rushed where all of that had to be packed into like 2 minutes. And it was like, no, we needed more there. But instead it was like, all you need to know is Orlando Bloom wants this thing. And all you need to know is that David Harbour is ready to jump to his team. You may talk, sir.
Okay, thank you. What I was going to suggest, in line with your thought process on this film, I do feel like this film swaps protagonist in a way that just kind of feels a little odd. Because, like you said, it starts with Orlando Bloom's character, and it's like, yeah, I can see that being an episode where it's like he is trying to get this thing passed with Nissan, And that's what's the beginning of the movie. And then we get to David Harbour, and he's got an interesting story. But then finally we switch to Jan, and then Jan kind of takes over the rest of the movie. So it does feel a little odd that we like switch. And then by the end of the movie, Orlando Bloom's like in the background. Like we completely forget that he's in the room. By the end of the film. Like it was like there was a script, like, because in line with what we were talking about with Air and Tetris. Air, let me say even Tetris. Tetris at least focused on one guy from one game company. And like he even is the narrator of the whole movie. He's even narrating all of these other players. It's like, this is who the other players in was this Tetris thing. And then there was this guy, me, who was trying to do all this stuff. So at least that movie, it's like we're gonna stay focused with this one protagonist. And then Air does the same thing, where Air is not focused on it would have been like it would have been like if Air started with Matt Damon's character in the beginning of the movie, and then we just, for whatever reason, shift to Michael Jordan. I like Air that it's just about this other guy that's not Michael Jordan. I like that it's about the behind the scenes of the shoes. I like that part of it.
Oh yeah.
So I do feel like what you're
totally
suggesting is that it's just a little, the way I feel like the set, I can see it. You, I think in previous episodes have said it's like we're on random, and it's not random as far as the plot elements. It's random and how are we telling the story? It's like, first
Blue
it's going to be.
Beetle was random. This was more like if we started with
it's
Jan,
random.
It would have been better to start with Jan.
It's random in how are we framing the story. Like it shifts viewpoints multiple times very quickly until it settles on Jan for like the good chunk of the end chunk of the movie. But the beginning of it is like, let's start with let's just explain to the audience what Gran Turismo is. And you're like, okay, is this going to be the rest of the movie? No, we don't get these like stop and start moments where it could have been, the whole movie could have felt more like a documentary. We never get that. It's just, when I say documentary, as in like we almost like stop the movie to explain something kind of thing. That's not what the movie is. That's just the beginning of it. And then we get this one somebody who we think is going to be kind of the protagonist. If we didn't watch the trailers, you think this guy's the protagonist, and then he's not. Then it's not this other guy, and then it's Jan. It's like it kind of shifts. It moves all over the place as far as the frame of
this is where I go back to Ender's Game. This is where I go back to Ender's Game, where Ender's Game was like following this kid and his, him playing this video game or whatever, like Last Starfighter or whatever, which actually I haven't seen, but I understand the story. If this would have started with Jan, and then our introduction to Orlando Bloom is that video, right? So at some point he's in an arcade that he frequents, and everybody at the arcade knows he's top dog, and his machine, let's call it, suddenly is like, hey, Jan, blah blah blah, you have this record. We want you to, you've been accepted to you're gonna race tomorrow, and if you win that race, you're accepted into GT Academy. But it plays a video where it's Orlando Bloom, and he's like, hey, if you win, that would have been a better way to then bring us. So we start with Jan, then we see that video with Jan, and he's like, oh my God, this is incredible. And then from there, we could then jump to, because what you see is a flashy Orlando Bloom he's like, hey, race fans, blah, blah. He's very much the showman, right? He's the guy that's all about the optics and the media and the sales pitches and all that. Then we cut to him. That brings us to Orlando Bloom, who then we see that he's actually not the flashy persona that he puts off, but he's actually kind of a dirtbag. And, he's just like, yeah, I can't wait to sign one of these idiots or whatever it is, however they would portray that. But the point being that we start with Jan, then we move to Orlando Bloom, and then Orlando Bloom introduces us to David Harbour, and then we go back to Jan. So now we have our trifecta. We have our three guys, right?
Right.
So that would have been like the ideal way of introducing everybody. But instead we start with Orlando Bloom, who just already has this idea for some reason. He's just out of nowhere. He's like, I think we should have a competition to find. And it's like, why? Like, I want to know. And I'm saying, because I'm watching it saying, I want to know what's driving this guy. What is driving this guy? Because he seems successful. What does he care?
Right.
What drives him to do this? And then with David Harbour, we get to know him as time goes on. So, but him.
I will say, I like the dinner scene.
Great. Him trying to talk people out of being racers makes sense as you get to know him, because he's like, this is a dangerous thing. And what he's trying to do, like, once you know that his backstory, go back and watch that scene where he's telling all of them to like quit now because you're probably not going to make it anyway. He's trying to save their lives. Like, he's a good guy at the end of the day, right? He's like, don't do this. And he keeps telling everybody, like literally everybody, like with Jan, he's like, look, dude, only a fraction of a fraction of a fraction have the ability to do this. So it's okay. It's okay if you don't make it, dude. Life will go on. And, of course, Jan's like, no, I'm going to do it. But David Harbour is trying to communicate with him like, dude, you could die. I've been there and you could die. I'm trying to save your life. I'm trying to do the right thing here. His character, like, he steals the show. As you said, Orlando Bloom falls into the background by the end.
He just disappears. Like, I think with David Harbour, I like the thing that you're pitching. The only thing I dislike is now we have to get rid of the steakhouse scene, because I do like that scene. I like that.
No.
Like how they set.
I'm not.
I like all that setup.
That's good. Yeah, I like
all that setup with that character. I like that he's one of the engineers at this place.
The steakhouse scene should have been like 5 minutes long, is what I'm saying. Keep the steakhouse scene, but it should have been longer. There should have been such a moment of us being like, F this rich entitled guy.
Well, we should call these guys and tell them
McLaren.
to make a TV show version of this movie.
Well, that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
I agree with you.
It feels like it was a 6-part miniseries fan edited into 2 hours. That's how it feels, because like, the age-old job of a director / editor is to play with time, right? This is where Christopher Nolan eat your heart out on this segment, where the whole thing is you play with time. And so you have a story, and so some segments you really, really emphasize. You spend a lot of time on that, and then other things, maybe you even condense into a time lapse, whatever it may be. But the point being that most of the moments of significance in this movie, they happened kind of like with Creed 3. Creed 3, my biggest gripe with Creed 3 was that in the final fight, it's over before it should have been over. It just ends at some point, and you're like, no, that can't be the end. Wait, no, that can't be the end. It's like, he's down, 1, 2, 3, and they count up to 10, and you're like, how is the fight already over? We didn't build up to anything. It just kind of ended. And that was a lot of this movie, where something would happen, and then I'd be going, okay, wait, like that moment should have been elongated so that we could kind of savor that moment. And that's what I mean. Instead of having these moments we savor, we just move on to the next thing. So it's like Orlando Bloom already has the idea. We're moving on. David Harbour, he doesn't want to do it. Then he does want to do it. We're moving on. But then we did sit with Jan, and we did spend time with his dad. That stuff was handled really well. And that's what I mean, where this movie isn't great, but it is very good, not great. So like times where we spent a lot of time, like him with his girlfriend, those were really sweet moments, because even though he's got groupies now, he really loves this one girl.
I was going to say real quick though, one of your gripes, your Chucky rants that you have had this entire year is romance in movies. And it was the one time when I watched this movie, I was like, oh my God, it's an actual romance in a movie. And I feel like I haven't seen this. And seriously, like I'm looking at all the movies we've seen on this list, and of course, there hasn't been a lot of we haven't seen a lot of romantic comedies. We've just kind of skipped to the bigger movie, the movie that's going to make probably the most money. And out of most of these movies, there's not a lot of like traditional just a romance between characters. And some of the movies you would think there would be, there really isn't. I think like Transformers didn't even have one. Like, that was something that like was kind of set up in the previous one. I'm just like breezing. Like Haunted Mansion kind of suggested one, but they didn't really like hone in on it at all. And I just thought it was so nice and lovely that they were just like, you know what? He's a teenage boy, or like late teens or whatever. There's probably a girl that he's smitten with or fancies, and
man. It was his first.
It's just a girl that he's just like, he kind of had a thing for.
That first love, man. Yeah, you could have all the groupies in the world, and you're like, I don't care. Like that's where I responded. I really resonated with that. Where
I really like that.
Where it was like they made a point of the first dinner scene with David Harbour. he says he's like, what are you going to do with all the advance money, the signing bonus? And he's like, oh, I'll use it for practical purposes. He's like, no, man, take a piece of it, fly in that girl you like. He's like, what girl? The girl you're always stalking on Instagram. You know, and it's like, and like what I loved about it too, what I loved, because I've said this before, I don't like when characters are like way too hot. So his girlfriend is cute. She's not like the hottest chick in the UK, right?
She's not Megan Fox.
That's where, yes, and that's where it was real. That's where it was like you could appreciate it, where it wasn't about her being hot. It was about him kind of connecting with her, right? So,
right.
And just kind of her being like a first, and like we all have that, and like that used to be the way the world worked, was you would meet somebody and then that was you imprinted on them and that was your person forever. And now we all live in the age of like, no, you date until you're 35 and then you get married, and it's like we're out of whack with nature now. Whereas something like this, I appreciate. I really loved watching all of that. I just love that
they put in a tradition, because this movie, SP keeps honing in on like, this movie feels very derivative, and I'm like, sure, but so are a lot of other movies, and it's like yes,
what of other racer movies?
Because it's a race movie.
This is based on a true story.
Right.
But this is based on a true story.
Hold on.
This is like its own thing. This is
Charlie, it's based off a true story, but it's based heavily. Like
you said, everything that happens actually happened. I don't care if it happened verbatim, but it happened. Like they got third place. That's all you need to know, is that they actually got third place.
Happened. Hold on. What I'm getting at with that is just that, yeah, it may be derivative, but like it's nice to have those elements in a tradition like Rocky.
It's
Rocky
not derivative.
One of the biggest.
All of those.
Rocky was one of the biggest sports stories of all time. Rocky
didn't happen in real life. If I make a movie,
it's one of the biggest sports movies of all time, and it has.
No, you make Rocky.
I'm talking about the romance. I
make a movie called Stoney about a guy who is like a karate guy and he just wants to go the distance or whatever. That's derivative.
That's my idea.
If you're telling a true story where all the major events actually happened and they just so happen to align with some other movies that have been made, maybe that's because within the genre, those like a guy gets into an accident and then he's afraid for a while. Why are you guys
suggesting that I'm saying that it's a bad thing? I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just quoting that a lot of what SP's been saying tonight about this movie, because Huevos is like saying, what do you say? I'm getting confused here, you guys.
I can't get to the comments because my page is all messed up. So bring up.
I don't know. It's just every time I've seen SP pointing something out, he's just like, oh, this movie seems too much like every other like.
SP's on the negative train with this movie,
just
and
very,
he's wrong.
very just doesn't want this movie to.
SP can't get over Knights of the Zodiac. He just loves Knights of the Zodiac. He just
hates Knights of the Zodiac. Let's just, you know what? Forget all of this. Let's just talk. Charlie, what's your ranking here? Where are you thinking? Where am I thinking? Because like I agree with you. I think it's in the Tetris realm of movies. It's a well-told story. It's Tetris era Creed 3. It's somewhere in there. I think it's a better movie than Sound of Freedom. I would rather watch this again than Sound of Freedom. Creed 3 has some really great acting.
Again, like I said with Nance,
you can't say that.
You can't make the rewatchability argument with Sound of Freedom.
I don't care. I think this is a much.
You know, dude. No,
movie.
I'd rather watch Haunted Mansion than watch Schindler's List. Well, yeah, no shit, because watching Schindler's List is hard, and you do it. Like
I would probably want to watch Schindler's List over Haunted Mansion again. But
you get my point.
Let's be real.
My point is that rewatchability does not apply to movies like Sound of fucking Freedom. Okay, like that's a rule. That's a fucking rule. Okay?
That's a rule that you made up. Okay, cool.
No, because it's bullshit. It's a bullshit argument.
You made up.
I'd rather watch I'd rather watch Indiana Jones than Sound of Freedom again, because I don't like to watch movies about little kids getting butt fucked, okay? Like, excuse me if I don't want to rewatch that movie, but it's still a good fucking movie. So anyway, but this movie is better. This movie's better.
It's better than Sound of Freedom. I think it's better. I think okay, if you want, if I can't go that route, because apparently we have rules on this channel now. If I can't go that route, I will say I think the acting overall is much better. Yeah,
it's more like guidelines.
Yeah, they better be guidelines. I think the acting overall is much better overall with this movie. And again, I think that the filmmaking, the form of this movie, I think is overall done better
Then what,
than
Creed?
Sound of Freedom.
Sound
of Freedom.
Okay.
And I would even argue maybe even Creed 3.
But I'm not questioning Sound of Freedom.
Okay,
Creed
so what about
3 is
Creed
still
3?
incomplete. Creed 3 is still incomplete in my book. This movie may rush its opening, but it nails its third act. Like the third act, like we haven't even mentioned how like it is rare for me to do this. It's rare for my jaw to drop, right?
We have rules.
Shut your face.
Keep going.
It's rare for my jaw to drop, and when there's a certain part of the movie where he's just driving along, just like Tommy Boy, driving along, and suddenly his car shoots up like this, and it's just sailing down the road, right?
And that really happens.
Like this, and then it just bam, and like I mean I was like I couldn't believe. Again, I don't watch trailers, so I didn't know it was coming. I
didn't think it was in the. I don't remember that part in the trailer at all.
I was like, it must have been. I assumed it was because it was incredible to see. They always put the best stuff in the trailers, and that's why I don't watch trailers. And jaw on the floor. I was blown away. Like all of a sudden, this guy is sailing, and it was like they slowed it down. This is where the director did a good job, where you're like, whoa. And then all of a sudden, just like total chaos. I mean, that was
like I remember being a wee lad and being told that basically cars. I know this is going to sound stupid, but cars are like these race cars are essentially airplanes. In that,
I was hoping you'd say that. Because we had a whole argument about Scaramanga, and you're like, that car plane is stupid, and I'm like, dude, you put wings on a car and it becomes a plane.
Well, I'm
you, McCurdy.
I'm referring
Shut
to
your
race
face.
Cars. Listen, I'm referring to race cars.
No, they are.
But I do remember a long time ago. I think at school I had remember there was somebody who was like an engineer from Delphi. It was like one of the students' dads worked at Delphi, and he was talking about how race cars specifically are essentially a lot like airplanes. They could technically fly, which we do see in this movie, because of how an airplane's wing is basically curved, right? So you build your cars like that because that's how you get a lot of speed, and that's how you break through, you break through wind very quickly or whatever.
That's why you have a fin on the back of a car, because that fin is a car reverse of a wing. A wing uses lift to take off. A fin is like a flipped over wing where the wind pushes it down,
pushes the car
so that you get
more
better
friction.
traction.
Right. Yeah. Better. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so like that was, but then when I saw that, it all like my whole brain went like, oh yeah, that thing I know. But yeah, the car, he goes over the hill and then the air comes up and then he just like flies and becomes
it was majestic. It was
it's like
so awesome. And then
I
you find out that he killed somebody, and you're like, oh my God, like suddenly it became real. And that's where that theme of like, dude, this isn't just a fucking video game anymore.
Not a game.
Like not a game. Like pretty much everything was on theme in a great way. So anyway, so you keep asking me where I'm at. I am well above. I mean, immediately, of course, I'm going to be above Air, because Air is a stopgap for me. Where Air is just boring. Like it really.
Did you like this more than Tetris? Part of me wants to say I think Tetris is a smarter movie overall. It's not as like flashy as this movie, but I do think that at least at the end of the day, it's really coherent as far as it's who the players are, what the story is. It's compelling. It has the compelling elements of what Air has, but it's not as like, it's not as flashy. It's not a whole like, this is a giant car movie with dive bomb drones and stuff. So I could see it below Tetris, but are you suggesting maybe it's above Tetris? Because I agree with you. Again, like I said, my highest of high was above Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, but I don't really believe that. I'm like, maybe, but I think both that movie and John Wick are much better overall, well done films.
Yes, they're excellently produced and put together.
3, and I definitely thought that this was better than The Flash, because I think The Flash is just there's a lot.
I'm at Tetris. I'm with you where it's above or below Tetris, no doubt. Everything above it is more complete and like excellently put together. This has that flaw, like I said, of feeling like a 6-part miniseries edited into 2 hours.
Sure.
I think the trouble that I run into is that like both Tetris and Gran Turismo have emotional elements that put them immediately above Air. I think that the real life story of Gran Turismo is so much better than the real life story of Tetris. But that doesn't matter when it comes to these movies. I think the dramatized version of Gran Turismo is just a little bit lower than the dramatized version of Tetris for what you just laid out. Basically, that Tetris is fun and loves what it's talking about. It loves Tetris. It loves Nintendo and the Game Boy and all that. And it has those lie to me moments that people go, that didn't actually happen. And I'm like, yes, but in the movie, it's good. It has that singular character who you understand what happens if he fails and you want to see him succeed.
Right. At the end of the day, both of these movies are based off true stories, but they lie to you heavily. Like they're not exactly the stories that's being told.
Tetris lied more is my point. Tetris lied more.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
This movie just shifts. This movie shifts events around, but also creates characters that never existed too, to kind of focus everything down a little bit more.
Yeah.
So
now where I throw a monkey wrench into everything I just said is
you just
David
hate both
Harbour. David Harbour is excellent, and just like everything he does is great. Now, that's where I wish that his story had been set up better. I wish it was just like the David Harbour and Jan story. But I do think that Tetris does kind of have this more complete feeling to it, where like me and anybody I've talked to who's watched Tetris and loved it is just like, that was just a good movie. And I'm right there with them because you are just following this one guy and you want to see him succeed. And you have that here, but you have the messiness of how they set up the other two characters, right? To where the opening seems kind of incomplete. The closing is great. The opening is kind of rushed and all that. 100 times out of 100, I want to have if you said, should a movie have a good opening? I'll give you two choices: a good opening and a bad ending, or a bad opener and a good ending. It's like, take the good ending. You want the good ending, you know? But but Tetris doesn't have that problem at all. Tetris doesn't have that choice. Tetris is good beginning, middle, and end, whereas this movie is like kind of a poor setup, but a good middle and end.
I'll go back to what I said earlier, though. I will go back to what I said earlier about the differences between this and Tetris, as far as the framing device from which the movie is being told. So typically when you have a movie, you have either you're going to focus on one protagonist or a way in which you're going to tell that story. And with Tetris, they really set up a very clear, we're going to kind of go in and out of reality a little bit to kind of set you aside, kind of like Adam McKay would in The Big Short, right? Where the movie kind of sets you aside. It's like, all right, sidebar here. Let me tell you about this little thing, so you're clear, well aware what's going on, but do it in an entertaining way that doesn't really like halt the audience. But it's like, oh, okay, now I understand what you're talking about. Tetris does that, where it's like, okay, like a video game, these are the players of the video game. Player 1, player 2, player 3, and like pulls you aside to kind of get you to understand who the players are. We have graphic interfaces to show all this stuff, and it's in the framework of like that 8-bit style of Tetris, and it's throughout the entire film. This movie, on the other hand, kind of deals with those elements a little loosely, and it's not as coherent, because I think the story, again, I think if you got Martin Campbell, you would have still had a really great movie. It just wouldn't have had all these like flashiness aspects to it. And I think Neil Blomkamp loves to do the documentary style, but it's like the beginning of the movie was the documentary. The very end of the movie was like, oh, by the way, Jan was the stunt guy, and this is kind of what happened. But like, it doesn't have the two other big main characters aren't real people. So then I'm like, yeah, but then when you get to the end of the movie, you're really expecting to find out, like with Air, most of the cast of Air were real people, and like there was something that they actually contributed to the whole Nike story. Same with Tetris. All those people were real players in the Tetris story, but this movie, it's like one of them was a real person. The other two were sort of based off people, but we're not really like, but for the purposes of like telling this story. So it was like they had to hobble together this whole story. I guess at the end of the day, I'm just saying like the form in which Tetris is told, I think, is much clearer. It's better. It's just a better version of it. And I think while the story of on paper of what Gran Turismo is great, I mean, the filmmaking, the way you're telling that story just doesn't match the same thing. So I still think it's a good movie. I would put it below Tetris.
I think it's very good. I put it in the camp of very good. Like I said, I think number 1 is masterful. I think 2 and 3 are great, and everything below that is very good to dog shit, right? In that range. So I agree with everything you just said. I think that Tetris just has that more complete storytelling feel to it. Whereas with this, it was like, again, a rough opener. But then once we got to the, excuse me, Too Hard is coming out. Once we got to the car sailing and, you know, everybody dying and being in the hospital and all that, I was just like, whoa, what a turn. What an incredible turn. And then him getting back on the horse. The whole speech, like David Harbour takes him for a drive on that track, stops at the accident point, and then gives his speech about why he quit. And then is basically like, don't let this one accident define you. It was not your fault, so don't let it define you.
So good.
Fantastic. All of that was so damn good. And he's like, you're going to finish your lap. So he gives him the keys and he finishes the lap. That was excellent. That's like, that scene might be enough to put it above Tetris. Like all of those things might be enough to put it above Tetris. But again, unfortunately, at the end of the day, as I keep saying, even though it has all these awesome things in there, but the dad, right? Like everything with David Harbour, the dad stuff, the two father figures, the car sailing with the hospitalization, and actually it's somebody's life actually ending because of Gran Turismo, this whole thing. It still has that kind of like weak setup and this overall feeling of like things that should have been given more emphasis are rushed. Right. And that like I said, the director and the editor are supposed to play with time to where you slow down to emphasize certain things, then you speed up to get past things that don't mean as much. Whereas something like Tetris did not have a problem with that. Right. So if it's between the two, it's like, yes, Gran Turismo has these excellent moments. What those excellent moments are kind of watered down by a macro sense of editing of it being rushed in the macro sense. You know, in the micro, that scene on the track with David Harbour is so good.
I don't know what you're talking about. I disagree. This should be at the bottom of the list. Good night. No, I agree. I think
did SB just earworm you?
Well, because he was like, go see. He just like told me to go rewatch Knights of the Zodiac. I was just like, wait, what? I'm gonna go, and then I remembered. I was like, oh, that's right. We're never doing that again. We're never doing that ever again.
We should, dude,
but I will say,
end of the year, let's have a Knights of the Zodiac watch party.
Wait, kill me right now. Huevos has said, he said he's hitting the cinemas this weekend. I would go see this. If you're going to go see it and you have the option to go see it in like a Dolby Cinemas, go see it in Dolby. I would always say go see it. If it's a Dolby Cinema movie, go see it in Dolby because all of those race scenes really like punch. Because they really do a great job with all the surround sound. And
dude, all my brothers, man,
so good.
All my brothers are gearheads, and I'm gonna tell them, you'll love this movie. And who gives a shit if it's derivative? Derivative is only a thing if you've seen a million movies, you know. And I know we talked about that with like the Pope's Exorcist versus the Exorcist, but at the same time, it's like things are only derivative if they don't bring anything. Hard when this brings a fresh element.
It's hard when you've seen that movie before and you're like, okay, there's a better version. And you know, like you said that with Plane too. You said you should go see this version versus seeing this movie. I think there are times when like I agree. I think there are times when it's like saying derivatives just kind of like doesn't really matter. And then there are times when it's like
just because this is a racing movie that has a guy who like goes through a tragedy and then has to get back on the track.
Then
that doesn't mean it's not handled differently.
It feels like you're copying it a little too much, but I don't really necessarily feel that in this movie. I think because the story's based off a true thing, it kind of doesn't matter. But you're trying to reframe, much like a music fit, like any story about a band or something, like they always try to like.
Oh, they broke up. Did they break up? And then they got back together for one last show. Like, like nothing new under the sun. But if you're going to do it differently, here you have this element of the ultimate underdog.
SB wants to see the plethora of PlayStation merch that has arrived at our house. I don't really like. Here's the thing. I
want that so bad.
Here's the thing,
SB,
I have a confession. So when Charlie and I like first met, the first love that we shared, that sounds really like homoerotic, but the first love that
was in the bathroom. No, it was in the bathroom.
It was
you had your pants off, and it was great.
No, the first thing that Charlie and I talked about was not movies, but video games. And we were always Nintendo heads. Like we were always about Zelda. That was that was the thing that Charlie and I talked about a lot. So I have never cared that much about PlayStation. I don't care if this movie's PlayStation or not. I just think the story's cool.
I said
that's in this movie. That's it. I
hate Gran Turismo.
I don't even care to play Gran Turismo. I'm just like, I don't care. I don't even need merchandise. I don't need a PS5. I don't. There's not a single game, and I don't play
Sony.
Games.
You make shitty movies. PlayStation fucking sucks. Gran Turismo is a piece of shit, and I never want to play it again in my life. I've played it like 2 times. I hate every time I play it. We don't want your fucking money. But your movie's good. Okay,
it's a good movie. That's all I cared about. I was like, oh, that was a great movie. That was pretty good. Left happy. I was like, that was good. Good, Sony. You made a pretty good movie.
Write me a check if you feel like it. Write me a check, and I'll give McCurdy like $5.
I would love. Well, you would do that because you're
a chunt.
I wasn't going to say that, but if you say
you wanted to.
Anyway, so you locked it in, right? We're locking it in.
Well, okay, we're locking it in mobile style. So I guess I'll put it.
Oh God.
So we're putting it right below Tetris, right?
Hold on. I should change your name real quick. Hold on. Let me fix your name real quick so we can be within theme.
We are below Tetris, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So just for the record, because I'm not going to show it because I'd have to take screenshots. We're at Oppenheimer, Beau Is Afraid, Infinity Pool, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning Part 1, John Wick Chapter 4, Tetris, Gran Turismo, Air, Creed 3, Sound of Freedom, The Flash, Fast X, Asteroid City, Spider-Man Across the Universe, Spider-Verse, 2 breaths because we're halfway through the year. Shazam, Fury of the Gods, Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, Megan Missing the Machine, Barbie, Indiana Jones, Dial of Destiny, Scream 6, the Super Mario Bros. Movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, Renfield, Blue Beetle, Evil Dead, Rise, The Pope's Exorcist, Magic Mike's Last Dance, Transformers, Rise of the Beast, Knock at the Cabin, Sidious, The Red Door, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, Plane Haunted Mansion, Cocaine Bear Nights, The Zodiac.
Real quick, Huevos, you're like, we should make the Zelda movie. So our buddy Kevra, is making you should check out his channel. But his whole channel is about adapting the Zelda series and his opinions on how it should be adapted. Some of which I agree, some of which I'm like, don't agree. But
we argue about it frequently.
You should check that out. It's a fun thing. I also have this fun thing going on.
Just FYI, I'm assuming
check that one out.
People know this, but at any time, anybody who's been on this channel, if you go to the channel homepage and then go to the tab that says channels, anybody who's ever appeared here is on there, and anybody who ever appears here will be on there. Kevra, he's got 2 channels, but he's on there. One of them is called Kevra, and then the other one's called Kevra's Vault, right? So Kevra,
we have always told him you should just have one channel, but he insists that he's going to have 2.
Oh my God, he might be listening. He might be offended. No, Kevra's Vault. Yeah, I don't give a shit either. He's a stupid asshole. He should have a single channel. I agree with you. But
Fight me.
Kevra's Vault is about games, and then Kevra is about how to adapt video games into other mediums. So that's where
But Kevra's also the
he goes in
star.
depth about adapting Zelda to film. So.
Huevos, Kevra's the star of Pairs. He is Pairs. So
he is Pairs. Yeah,
he's Pairs.
I've been enjoying editing him.
I am waiting to see the next scene. I'm just like, you got 10 minutes in to our 20-minute movie.
Anyway, so we are locked in. Episode 39 is complete. I had absolutely no notes because I saw the movie and then got home and immediately got on camera. So,
I saw this last night and I was like, decent movie. Probably Charlie's gonna have some. Generally, I honestly came out thinking like, I think Charlie's gonna like this movie. I don't know what grapes you're gonna have with it. I definitely had. I really
enjoyed it. Like
I had little things, but it was a good movie.
Yeah. Usually my dad's here and he's used to me coming back from the theater and he's like, so, and I go, usually I'm like, fucking sucked. Like he's used to me being like, oh, but I can't, I go, it's good. It's good. I really liked it.
This is a movie that you could take your dad to. This is definitely a movie I would take your dad to.
Oh, especially if your dad's like, what? You want to talk about movies on the internet? Stupid fuck. But at the same time,
this is a Father's Day movie. You should take this, see it with your father.
Yeah.
It's great.
At the same time, my father is the #1 fan of this channel. So just FYI,
SB said he wants me in SB wants me in my next movie. He's gonna wear a GT shirt.
Yeah. What does GT mean? Is that gay titties?
Gran Turismo.
Does SB have gay titties?
What
SB seems like the type to have gay titties.
Welcome to Demonetized, the channel.
Well, anyway, we're all good then. We locked it. We locked this in. I feel good about it because I like, part of me is like, Gran Turismo is the bigger movie, but Tetris is the more perfect movie, even though it's a little bit smaller and somewhat lies to us. But it's just like something that we got a taste of in Gran Turismo is that video game flavor. But I could have used more of that. I could have used
this
even
movie
more
doesn't feel like a video game movie. Tetris felt like a video, because that's what's weird is like people are gonna say like Tetris aside, Tetris doesn't like, to some Tetris wouldn't even count because it's a streaming movie. But between the two movies that came out that were based off video games, this is clearly the better of the two. But when you see it, you're like, and if you didn't know, like if they had chopped that first part and you didn't know it was a real game, you'd probably be like, oh, this is a video game movie? Like it doesn't feel like that because most of what actually happens just interesting enough because it's all capped with racing. And you're like,
speaking of which, on that note, what I've been harping on, right? What I've been harping on is that there's a when I say like certain moments that need to be stretched, right? That's what a director and editor do. They stretch time or they compress it. Something that needed to be stretched a little bit was shut the fuck up. There's a moment at the end, like, okay, you know, at the end of Top Gun, when it's a big moment where
you'll be my wingman.
Iceman's like,
be my wingman anytime.
You'd be my wingman anytime. We have that moment here, and it's where the one of the pit crew, like the lead pit crew guy who's been giving Jan shit.
I had no idea what he said. I had zero idea what he said.
He's like, hey, I pit for you, and they're like, that was it. It was like, so, you know, it's like moments like that should be built up a little bit more.
If this was a TV
more
show,
seasoned director would have done that. And if it was a TV show, there would have been more scenes between him and that guy.
Right. And it would have been like, it would have been always like, he hates, like, we would have seen more races. And then it would be like every race, he always like purposely just like cusses him out, says something mean to him, just is always giving him shit. And he's just like, oh, God, like, stop. Like, and then at the very end, he wins. And it's just like, I'd race for you anytime. Like, then it would have been great. But, you know, it's, I honestly couldn't understand what he said because he's so loud.
it was like, yay, we won. And then it was 3 seconds where like that guy was just like, hey, I'd pit for you anytime. Like they couldn't even fit in that message. But then right after that was David Harbour going, hey, you came into this as a video game nerd and now you're the best in the world. Like that was an effective moment. So it's like back to back, you had what I'm talking about, which is compressing things to a degree where they're irrelevant, where they should have been expanded upon. But then right after that, you have the really good payoff. So that's where Tetris just barely squeezes it out, where if those moments had been savored a little bit, this would easily have beat out Tetris, if not more films. But that was the killer for me, was just like,
sure.
And
just
I'll
the
say
macro
for the last
edit of the film.
Yes, the macro
and
approach.
I agree.
One more
I
time.
definitely, I felt that. I felt that in the movie.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, I was like, I get it.
One more time. This should have been a 4, 5, or 6-part series on the PlayStation Network, right? But instead, it was a theatrical release.
That's the thing.
And the whole time watching, I was like, I can't wait for them to release the like 4-part series on like the next Gran Turismo game or something.
Yeah, I want the 5-hour Neil Blomkamp cut of the film.
Release the Blomkamp cut.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Always got to make that joke. Anyway, you got anything else to say other than David Harbour is
I mean, I just like briefly, this isn't really, there was 2 notes that I did say, and I said there are times when I felt like the movie is a little too melodramatic, but
like
fine.
but deserved it
a little. Sometimes it was deserving, sometimes I felt like it was a little over the top, and then there were other times, and I don't have specific scenes stuck in my head. I just remember as I was watching the movie, I was like, this is a little melodramatic at times. Like, can we chill just a little bit?
I'd say I'd say where it was melodramatic was when he was in the hospital bed after he was in the accident. Right. He was like, "Get out, get out!" And I was like, "No, dude." Like,
he was like, "That's the Brian song." I say Brian song. That's just like the TV movie like acting thing. And then I was also gonna say like SB's been harping on the whole like video game movie.
I want to know SB's problem with this movie. I really do.
He just hates that it's a video game movie and we're giving it a lot of props for being.
It's not a video game.
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like he's like, oh, you guys like the Sony movie. It sounds like you guys are just, this movie's not that good. I've seen the data. People aren't going to see this movie. It's like, yeah, it's coming at the end of August.
But again,
it's coming out at the end of August.
We're not comparing this to Saving Private Ryan. I say this every episode. We're not comparing this to Saving Private Ryan. We're comparing it to 2023. 2023 sucks. This whole year sucks. Pretty much every movie sucks.
Year's been great. I've enjoyed a lot of these movies, so I don't know what you're talking about. Let's talk about David Harbour,
I've enjoyed them, but they're not classics. They're not instant classics.
No year is full of instant classics. Get
that
idea out of your head.
I agree. That's the point.
That idea
That's the point.
Out of your head.
Like, okay, when we go through and painstakingly rank every Best Picture winner, then you can complain about this, that, and the other. But like, as far as 2023 goes, this movie's pretty damn good.
There you go. Sure.
Yes.
Your handheld, Charles, by the way.
Okay, wait, hang on.
Your handheld, Charles. There you go.
Fuck you, SB. Fuck you, and I'll fucking find you, and you don't find you in your house, SB. I'm gonna come after you. Get out! Get out! No, see all these dead birds on the wall, SB? That's where you're gonna be. I'm gonna put you right here. That's gonna be your whole fucking face.
Now we're getting into some territory here. Let's simmer down here.
I think SB would like that.
Let's calm down. All right, let's just talk about David Harbour and how great he is. Because Charlie and I, like, after I watched the movie, I was like questioning, like, what is the standout thing in this movie? And I think it's David Harbour. Like,
yes, he made the
acting
movie.
Wise, his acting, like, again, that scene that you're talking about, the one where he's like, you know, everybody here is here to like support you. I want you guys to fail. To me, that was like almost in line with the
because you're all a bunch of idiots, and I'm trying to save your life.
Right. It's the Full Metal Jacket, but to me, like that is like the Full Metal Jacket scene where like the sergeant comes in and he's just like berates everybody and like tears them a new one. And this one is like kind of a fresh. I mean, it's similar, but it's not. I mean, it's not the same thing. But it's like a different take on that kind of idea, just to make them
pause for emphasis, because in that moment, like, because once you know his whole experience, when even go back to that scene where he's first talking to Legolas, and Legolas is like, dude, yeah, we're gonna get some guys who play video games into a car. Isn't that cool? Isn't that gonna sell a ton of Nissans? And he's like, you asshole, you're playing with people's lives. People could die. And Orlando Bloom's like, yeah, whatever. Marketing, bro. Marketing. Like, Orlando Bloom is an idiot through the whole movie. And this guy is the best because it's like, he's like the dad who's really hard on you, not because he hates you, but because he loves you.
He loves you, yeah.
Yes. And that shows. This whole character was so damn good.
They gave David Harbour so much to do in this movie. I don't think by any stretch of imagination, I don't think he's going to get an Oscar nom off this movie.
No.
But I felt like he was really good. I felt like he's like,
as far as the movie goes, he was the
standout performance in the whole thing. I think he's the best part of the movie.
Him and the character, one and the same, as like being incredibly effective within this movie.
Really good.
So, yeah. So anyway, you all know him,
and that was the one.
Yeah, you all know him. You all love him. We don't need to say much other than like, he came into my life through Bond.
Dad.
We know him from Bond because, like, but like not everybody knows him, but they all know him from stupid ass Stranger Things. But we won't hold that against him or anybody else. But he's not the dad that we all have. But
how much have you been?
He's
drinking?
the dad that we all we all deserve. You know what I mean? He's the one who's hard on us because not because he hates us, but because he loves us. You know what I mean? So.
What is happening? You've turned into Marlon Brando in The Godfather, like slowly, but like I know this reference.
It's always the sad that we wish we had, because he never wanted this for you, McCurdy. You say you want to be a race car driver, but I never wanted this for you. I always thought you'd be, office manager, Jan. Toll booth operator, Jan. But no, you want to be a race car driver. I never wanted this for you. So on that note,
we scared off SP. It's only Huevos. He's like, Huevos the only one that's here for Charlie Brando, as he said, Charlie Brando.
Charlie Brando.
And it's not a good impression, dude. It's terrible. It's pretty bad, actually. But the fact that you're committed,
it's not meant to be, asshole.
It's your commitment to the bit is appreciated. So anyway, let's just toast to the best part of this movie.
To Mr. D. Harbour, usually stealing the show, but in this one he was the show. So
sure.
See you on the next one, David Harbour. I wish you were my dad.